So you're recording now? Or you were recording the whole time, probably.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to call to order the Planning Commission meeting for January 26, 2020. I'll do a roll call. Chair Simpson here. Vice Chair Kai.
Here.
Commissioner Widola.
Present.
Commissioner Harsh.
Here.
Commissioner Bantz.
Here.
Commissioner Brown. Not. And Commissioner Giles. Not here. All right, so before we move into the first item, I was just asked prior to the meeting, we were discussing the new format on the agenda and looking for any feedback to see if the information that staff had regarding the background of the item and the purpose of the work session item, if that was helpful or if there was more information that was needed.
Sure. So all I was going to say was what Commissioner Bantz and myself discussed was perhaps just a key to where to focus when we get these large packets. When you give us 300 pages and a week to work through, knowing the key areas of interest, particularly when we're reviewing like that. It was the PUD. You guys already had all of the asbestos cleanup discussions in previous meetings, and that was settled. Settled matter. So I put my energy in looking into those things and looking up those. So it was just a suggestion we had. So we were just sharing with the wider audience. That was part of a key takeaway in our discussion.
Excellent. And when we get those packets, you can either reach out to Erica or whoever the staff person is, or I know we partnered up with individual people, but if any one of the commissioners wants to call me directly and ask, for, like you said, key items that need to be looked at or where the focus is, I'm happy to take any calls. So, okay, well, moving on, we will go to the comprehensive plan update, item number 2 on our agenda. And I believe, Erica, you are in charge of all presentations tonight, aren't you?
I am. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Hold on one second. It is not, sorry. There we go. All right, I hope everyone can see my screen this evening. So tonight, I'm going to give you a quick update about where we're at in our comprehensive plan process. Last week, we had a community advisory committee team meeting and a technical advisory team meeting on the current theme that we're in the comp plan, which is our infrastructure block. And just to let everyone know, we only have one more plan block left, which we're going to be starting in February here. And we are still on track to adopt the comprehensive plan sometime by this summer. So we're in the coordinated and connected infrastructure block, and the topic areas in this block include transportation, public facilities, that's water, sewer, stormwater, our broadband facilities, and then we take a closer look at energy. And And these relate to our statewide planning goals, Goal 12, which is transportation, Goal 11, which is public facilities and services, and then Goal 13, which is energy conservation. So once again, this is a little schematic about where we're at. Last week, we had our CAC and our TAC meetings. Tonight, I am just following up with Planning Commission to go over what those two committees reviewed and to provide you feedback on what they provided us with. And then we will have a joint Planning Commission and City Council meeting that's planned for March 2nd to review the draft goals and policies in this block. So this is our vision statement, just a refresher. This vision statement came out of our visioning process in 2018. I'm not going to read it out loud here. I'm just going to move pretty quickly through this slide presentation because I know that this vision has been in a lot of your packet materials and you'll continue to see it. And these are the 5 goal statements that were also developed through that visioning process. And so these are our goal statements that we're working with in this block theme. So just a little refresher about what has gone into this block. We have our 2014 adopted transportation system plan that provides us with information regarding our street system, like in Sherwood. We also have our 2016 water, stormwater, and sewer master plans. The city has a 2016 adopted water conservation management plan. And then we have our current goals and policies in our current comp plan that dates back. However, it has been updated to reflect the policies in the 2014 transportation system plan. What we do know moving forward here, that the transportation system plan, it's anticipated to be updated within the next couple of years as well. So key policy and considerations for outreach. So these were our key policy considerations in the theme, kind of our new themes that weren't necessarily reflected in our current comprehensive plan. So these include policies around complete streets, safe routes to school, the expansion of broadband in the community, and implementing green stormwater infrastructure practices. We reached out to several different stakeholder groups in this for this theme. We reached out to Public Works, Engineering, Clean Water Services, which is our partner agency that focuses on stormwater. We reached out to ODOT, Washington County Land Use and Transportation, TriMet, the Sherwood School District. We reached out to Bonneville Power. And then we also reached out to different broadband providers within the community. We also reached out to Metro, and Metro has a new program at the moment. It's called the Innovative Learning Opportunities in Transportation. It's actually a pilot program that's looking at different innovative ways that can enhance transportation opportunities in the region using new tools that are out there for transportation services, such as Lyft and Uber, but also looking at different ways the curb space can be utilized for enhancing transportation as well. So when we reached out to our stakeholder groups, we asked them a series of questions. We wanted to know really what were the trends and drivers of change, are for transportation and energy and technology. We asked them what are the major opportunities and challenges in these topic areas. What are some of the best practices or strategies that they are aware of in their topic areas? And then we asked them, what would it mean if the city considered these policy concepts around complete streets, safe routes to school, and enhancing, broadband, or using different smart city applications? And I don't know how familiar everyone is with smart city applications. This is kind of a new technology term that is out there. I am not an expert in this field, but just to provide you with some examples of what smart city applications can do, they are kind of focused on newer technology, 5G technology that's out there that can be used in a way that can save money and be more efficient. One example might be you could have a sensor and trash cans throughout the community, and when that trash can is full, we know that we need to go out there and pick up that specific the material in that trash can. There's a lot of different applications that are out there for smart cities. So on transportation, we, in the draft goals and policies that you received last week, there were a lot of different policies and objectives in that document. It was a great big long list, and it didn't really format in the way our previous block chapter, or the previous chapters have looked like in our comprehensive plan draft goals and policies that we have reviewed. And we received feedback from the CAC to kind of go back through those goals and policies in that in the transportation section, and go through them, make them a bit leaner, and then align them with the 4 goals that we have at the beginning of the chapter. And so when these draft goals and policies come back to you in another 2 weeks here, before your joint meeting with City Council, we'll have that transportation section reworked. We hope to have everything line up with those goal statements. So I just wanted to let you know that that's going to be changing. The how it looks, it will be changing. When we talk to our transportation stakeholders, we know that the TSP is going to be updated in the next 2 years, and it's going to have a heavy focus on community outreach. We need to engage discussion over the future of Highway 99 in the community, and in particular look at building safe crossings over Highway 99. The transportation stakeholders also let us know that we need to prioritize vulnerable road users, to guide policy decisions that could produce better outcomes for those folks in the future. So those were some key takeaways from our transportation partners. Speaking about infrastructure, wastewater, sewer, and storm, we reached out to Clean Water Services, our Public Works Director, and some key takeaways from this conversation included addressing DEQ requirements for hydromodification through stormwater. And I'm sure not all of you know what hydromodification is, but basically hydromodification is a way that we can reduce stormwater impacts using natural features to slow and detain stormwater on site. We learned that Sherwood, we need to focus on resiliency in our water system and do some more upgrading. And then Sherwood, we can definitely experiment with new approaches to stormwater management. But also we should assess and balance costs of green infrastructure practices as well. And I know that that has come up in our CAC meetings before.
Eric, we have a question from Commissioner Vance.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, just maybe I don't totally understand our current infrastructure around stormwater. I mean, we have storm drains everywhere, and it seems like our streets pretty much, have that all equipped. So you're saying that there's talk of doing something else with these other more green approaches or what have you, so that it doesn't have such a downstream impact. What is wrong with our current? What's impacting? Where's our stormwater actually go, and what's wrong with it?
I would say there's probably nothing wrong with where our stormwater goes now, because we have to follow guidelines from DEQ and Clean Water Services, but it's just a way of enhancing and kind of using our natural landscapes that could be used to reduce stormwater costs for putting in, pipes and whatnot.
Oh, it'd be cost reductions as well.
It could be cost reductions, but there could be additional costs as well. It's just finding a balance and taking when these approaches come up, assessing them, cost benefits.
Thanks.
So from what came out of the CAC meeting, there were a couple of comments and concerns. As it's being presented, the stakeholder comments, many of those are from agencies that have a vested interest that potentially may not be in alignment with what our citizens are, but that's the other document we received in our packet this evening, that those opinions and those comments and the feedback that was received through those stakeholder comments weren't citizen stakeholder comments, those were agencies. And so they, if it's coming from Metro or TriMet, the vision that they're looking at and the filter by which they're making their decisions about what to recommend to the city of Sherwood is based on TriMet's filter or Metro's filter or whatever. And that document of those stakeholder comments is a supplement to what our comprehensive plan is, and we're not required to take any one of their comments directly and incorporate it into our comprehensive plan unless it's like a DEQ requirement. And one of the other sides to that green stormwater question that you had was that one of the comments was from a developer or someone within the development community that said that our stormwater swales reduce the amount of building area that they have, and they were looking for ways to not have to do stormwater as such an open land area, that it would be undergrounded or joint venture with other land owners in the area. So I just want to put it out there that the CAC had addressed stakeholder. They had quite a few questions about the stakeholder comments and putting them into perspective, and wanted to reach out to you with that information.
I am very glad you made that comment. I was actually going to ask about that. I mean, they all tend to trend one direction, all these comments, it seems like a lot of them do. And particularly lacking is the actual citizens of our community here. So I was wondering how that played in. Yeah.
We'll definitely get there,
Yeah.
Commissioner
Okay.
Vance,
Thanks.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out, because I think we've seen this similar thing echoed in previous previous sections of the comprehensive plan, right? All these different kind of niche stakeholder groups have very specific and very vested interests in pushing a certain point of view. And I'm not saying that's a negative or a point of view necessarily, right? But it is a very narrow-minded point of view that pertains specifically to their lens of whatever the topic is, right? And it's not necessarily representative of the community as a whole. So I think we always need to take that into consideration as we look through these. And it's easy. It's easy to get them to give us feedback because they're invested. It's hard to get some people in the community to comment on stormwater. A lot of there's not a lot of people know about it and probably don't have a lot to think about it, right? So we have to make sure we don't over rev on the specific stakeholders with vested interests.
Great comments. Speaking to our stakeholders about energy and broadband, some of the comments that we received were to look at public-private partnerships for the development and installation of electric charging stations, possibly in the community. To design standards and control access for screening of the rollout of 5G, and I know that we talked about this previously at the Planning Commission level. And then we need to build for the future, especially in Sherwood West, with infrastructure and supporting that area with fiber. And requiring extra, conduits in new developments if necessary. And then we, talked about the development of a smart city master plan that would look at the different ways that we can utilize these smart city applications for efficiency and cost reduction. And then definitely invest in technology and equipment and internet access.
So, Erica, is an example of smart city planning inclusive of the smart streetlights that help traffic move more? I mean, because I think that would be a really good example for that the community can understand. If we could get to Walton Sherwood Road and Highway 99 connected with the rest of the streets, and that it was smart technology that helped our traffic move, that would be a goal that would be supported by many people.
That's definitely an application that can be used in a smart city approach. So I'm just going to go over some of the bigger themes that we've touched on and look at the draft policies and objectives for each one. So the current inputs for the goals and policies that you have in your packet came from, the plans that the city has already adopted that are out there, our TSP and our facility master plans. We took a look at the current goals and policies in our current comprehensive plan, our stakeholder interviews, and we've kind of melded that information together to develop these draft goals and policies. So the first policy concept that I'm going to talk about is complete streets. And complete streets is really, it's a concept used in transportation planning, and it looks at designing the streets in a way that takes in account all users, and it promotes mobility and health and accessibility for all people of all ages and abilities. So the first policy statement that we have drafted is to prioritize the incorporation prioritize incorporation of street design features and techniques that promote safe and comfortable travel by pedestrians, cyclists, emergency responders, transit users, and motorists based on the street context and function.
Erica, both Councilor Scott and I have questions.
Oh,
go ahead,
yes.
Councilor Scott. I don't know who raised their hand first, so go ahead.
I think you did, but we're already doing this, aren't we?
We are, but we don't have necessarily a policy that directs us in our comprehensive plan and in our TSP. We don't directly necessarily call out this concept. I think when we update our next TSP, it's something that will be specifically called out. And we
Okay.
can always,
But
and
it's
we
in,
can
but
always
it's in
do
all of
more.
our, it's in all of our road design standards. I mean, we haven't built a road that doesn't have these features in a decade, probably, or maybe more, that I'm aware of.
And there's, and there's always more that we can be thinking about too as we design streets, and who uses the streets and who uses the curbs and sidewalks, and what those should
How
look
do you
like
use
in
a
certain
curb?
areas. And well, let's say, for example, you can do well, we all know this, traffic calming. You can do curb extensions to slow down traffic.
Oh, okay.
You can you always put street furniture out in areas that users might use it, close to parks or senior centers, or senior facilities. There's just there's little extra things that we can do to look at our streets, to design them in a better way for all users.
So my question is more of a global, what are you asking a question, and then how does it, so having been at the CAC meeting, and you started this meeting by telling us that, and I know that what we were handed, what came in our planning commission packet is exactly what was handed to the CAC. The CAC reviewed the document and asked that significant changes be made to the document that we've already reviewed, because a lot of the objectives that are listed in the document we received in our packet are actually action items, not necessarily objectives. And in the way our comprehensive plan has been structured in the previous blocks. And so we have existing policies in what was handed out. Sorry. Is this policy that you're presenting now going to be replacing something that we already have, or is it a new policy you want to add?
So this is a great
or
question.
Are you asking us if we want it?
So there's two things here. The first question would be, do you want this policy? This policy isn't in our current TSP. It's not specifically called out, and it's not specifically called out in the current comprehensive plan. So this is actually a new policy concept that we're specifically calling out.
So are you saying this would potentially replace
this would be a policy, a new policy under one of those goals, one of those 4 goals in that document in the transportation section.
Right, but it could potentially be an overarching policy to existing, to one that's already in here. Because part of the challenge is that we already have a TSP that needs to be updated. So if we are creating a comprehensive plan that overarches the transportation plan, wouldn't one of our policies be to incorporate the existing transportation plan and then have an actionable item of updating it?
Yes, yes. So you hit the nail on the head there, Jean. So as we go back through those transportation goals and policies, in the document that you're holding, we're going to be making it leaner. We're going to create just an overarching policy that states, the city needs to, support and update its TSP, on a regular basis.
But I'm looking at this one and comparing. So policy 3 is establish clear and objective set of transportation design and transportation design and development regulations. Anyway, it sounds really similar to the one you have, except you use the word, you explain complete streets, but you don't have the word complete streets in the policy itself. So that's a little confusing. So if we support this idea, it may replace or enhance an existing policy?
Correct. Or we may just delete one of the old policies and institute this this policy if it makes more sense.
And is complete streets a planning buzzword that's been used for 1 year or 10 years?
It's been used for, quite, the term has been used for quite a while within the planning and transportation sectors for, street design and different contexts.
Okay. Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just this policy seems very straightforward. So we're prioritizing the creation of streets that can be used as streets by anybody who'd use one. I mean, it's just I don't know. It seems like a kind of generic. Okay, I mean, why would we build a street if it didn't do this?
But
You know.
so streets are classified differently. So arterial streets, act differently from neighborhood streets, and so they're designed differently. And so when we take a look at building, a neighborhood street, we want to make sure that it's built in a way that enhances the neighborhood. Do we include street furniture? Do we need traffic calming incorporated into the street? Do the signalized buttons need to be, longer because there's the senior center located on a corner, and seniors, they may need some extra time getting across the street. So it's just those little.
Well, actually, Erica, when I was listening to how it was explained, the inference that I got from context and function as it was explained, I think Anna E said it, was prioritizing the user. So on an arterial, you would prioritize the width of the street to freight traffic and car traffic, versus in a neighborhood or a collector, you might prioritize more bandwidth to pedestrians and bikes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I think that the policy, the last couple where it says based on street context and function, could be more clear that I guess what I heard, what the verbalization from the meeting was that we would be prioritizing the street based on who the user is.
Right.
And that's not what we're reading.
That's a great comment. We can definitely elaborate and make that more clear.
Commissioner Bance, does that go towards your?
Yeah. I mean, it just that makes sense what you're saying. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because I agree. If the policy is nothing more than restating the obvious, it's not forwarding our goal at all.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. I mean, this is what streets are for. Right. So yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yep.
Our next theme here is our safe routes to school. This is a new policy, and we want to partner with the Sherwood School District to develop a citywide safe routes to school program that improves safety, encourages walking, rolling, and biking to school, and it would identify critical infrastructure needs and positions the city for regional, state, and other funding opportunities.
Counselor Scott, you had a question?
Yes, I do. So on City Council, we have been attempting to partner with the Sherwood School District on this program for 3 to 4 years, and they have shown very little interest in partnering with us. Has that changed? Are they now interested? I haven't heard if they are.
We continue to reach out to them on this, on this topic of safe routes to school, and we have actually partnered with them, I believe twice now within the past 2 years, pre-COVID, on safe routes to school days, where we encourage kids to walk and bike to school, and they get different, you know,
Yeah.
little
Yeah,
treats,
it's
I
my
guess.
understanding- yeah, it's my understanding that was done at the individual elementary school level. At the district level, we have not been able to get much. Now, maybe that's changing, but I would say it, unless the school has changed their stance on this, and then I don't know that we can put this in our policy document if we don't have a willing partner, because as a city we cannot get funding from these government these grant programs without the city being actively engaged in that grant seeking process, and we've been stymied by that for several years. So
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Councilman Scott. Did you say that as a city we have to get the sub? I think you said this as a city you couldn't do it without the city. You mean without the school board? We can't do anything.
A lot of the grant programs that we have in the past few years that we have looked at applying for require the school board, the school district, to be an active participant in the grant seeking program.
Yeah, that
And
makes sense.
when we've reached out to them to try to secure grants, like major dollar grants to fix sidewalk holes, for example, we have been rebuffed. And so we can't apply for the grant. We just can't. So
Well, and as
hopefully their stance has changed, but unless it has, I don't know whether we should put this as a policy without their partnership.
So this is Julia, and I don't know that their stance has officially changed as a whole district, although they probably would say, yes, we're supportive of it, but that's not where we want to prioritize right now. But that doesn't mean that you don't want to have that be part of your aspiration. If you're developing your plan based on what is now, it's not really a forward thinking plan, and so if you're saying as a community we really want this to happen, it sets the tone and sets the message that kind of directs staff, and sends the message to the school board and sends the message to the community that is the direction we want to be heading.
Yep, that's a good call out.
Commissioner Widola also has a question.
See, I dropped. Am I back now? I had something cut out here.
Yes.
All right. So I maybe to echo on Councilor Scott's comments too, is the question I had on this is, why the partner aspect of this? To me, it's when you look at the safe routes to school, it's something that needs to be done. But from the comments he said now, it sort of makes sense where we're at. So as an aspirational goal, it makes sense to, I guess the information that Councilor Scott just provided sort of changed my thinking on this. So I'm going to lower my hand and shut up.
No.
Well, may I ask, since I've already...
Well, Commissioner Vance had his hand raised.
My bad.
I just put it up though. So.
I know, but you had it up. I thought you had it up the whole time. Sorry.
No, that's okay. You can go ahead first, and I'll go after you.
Okay.
Well, part of what I was trying to ask Councilman Scott is this the reason that this partnership and these fundings that we don't have some kind of a safe way? Does this initiative lead to a safe way to cross 99 for the kids right now to the new high school? I mean,
no, this is not related to that.
Okay.
However, I just want to make this a little bit more clear that if we did develop a Safe Routes to School program with different schools in the community, there are funding opportunities out there through Safe Routes to School to improve crossings such as Highway 99. There's different grant funding.
Commissioner Vance.
Yeah, I guess my question for Councilor Scott is what is your sense as to why the school board, this is not the first time I've heard something like this. The school board's kind of unresponsive to city council. And is that, I mean, I don't know how much you can say, but I'm just curious what your sense is there. I mean, is this temporary because they're so wrapped up in like the whole reopening schools issue or whatever, or is there something else going? Can you comment on that at all?
I certainly don't want to derail the meeting. That's not why we're here, and maybe I shouldn't have said.
But it matters to this policy. It seems like an obvious policy,
Certainly. What we've been told, and if we take it on face value, is that their energies have been wrapped up in the new schools, getting them built, getting them opened, getting them reconfigured, and they didn't have the capacity to take on these other initiatives. I think in some cases, like with some of the safe routes to school stuff, we basically offered to do all of the work, and we just needed essentially them to say yes, we agree, and sign on the dotted line, and that didn't work either. So I don't know what to make of that. I don't want to read too much into it. I'm hopeful. I think we're all hopeful that we can proceed together, into the future. But yeah, I have a lot of questions around where that's going to lead. I mean, there's been some other, like some other long-standing partnerships with the school district have been, discontinued by the school district's choices, and those are their choices to make, and they're right to make them. But it certainly, I would say the partnership feels less partnery than I would like it to be, and hopefully we can improve that going forward. And maybe with the school build out being behind them, and once COVID is behind them, maybe there's an opportunity to bring those partnerships further along, and we're certainly all on council going to try to help move that along.
Thank you for the color. Thank you.
All right, so moving on to green stormwater infrastructure, we have developed a new policy around green infrastructure. The policy statement reads, coordinate with clean water services to promote green infrastructure practices and identify opportunities for innovative stormwater management techniques in new growth areas. When we presented this policy to the CAC last week, a couple comments that we received was if we could make this policy more general in nature and not necessarily call out clean water services. So if we made this policy statement a little bit more general, it could read, promote green infrastructure practices and identify opportunities for innovative stormwater management techniques in new growth areas. Are there any questions or comments in regards to this policy?
Commissioner Widola.
Thank you. Yeah, it hits me in a few other policies that I read through that were highlighted here, where we call out a lot of specific companies. For example, I think who was the fiber provider that's now bankrupt or going through bankruptcy right now? We call them out by name, and it's like, well, we got to be careful on a 20-year visioning document to be a little more generic because who's out there. So yeah, I would agree with that, and I think we need to go back to a few other of the policies and objectives and some of the previous stuff here to look at them and generalize as much as we can. So instead of calling out the Comcast and the Frontier, who's in bankruptcy now, is maybe just say ISPs or communication providers or whatever terminology that makes sense from the city to use, but not be so specific to the companies.
Right. Point well taken. The next new policy concept that we have developed is this concept around a broadband expansion in the community. The policy that was developed states, develop a growth plan for Sherwood broadband to expand fiber services for all users and support smart city applications. Once again, from our conversation with our CAC last week, if we could make this policy a little bit more general and not necessarily call out Sherwood broadband. That was their comment to us. And so when you get this policy in the next 2 weeks, it'll look a little bit different. I don't know if you have any questions or comments in regards to this new policy statement.
Commissioner Vance?
Yeah, could one of you point me to where in our planning packet that we were given this is? I'm having trouble following along a little bit. What page number? Because I took notes throughout the packet, but I couldn't find the last policy stated.
Packet page number 14, under policy 1, objective 1.5.
Actually, I
There-
think the policies that Erica's doing right now are new. They're not, I didn't even think they were listed in here, were they? Not all of them.
I don't think not all of them were listed in there.
Okay, yeah, I'm seeing objective 1.5 here, which
yes.
is called objective. This one's called policy. So I was looking at the header sections for policies. Is in the last one, is that in here too somewhere? Because maybe it's just one of the objectives.
It should be.
I think it's just further down on the same page, 2.3.
Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. I'm with you now. Got the nomenclature.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
And just as a point, that was part of the challenge that was presented through the CAC, was that these policies and objectives that were printed out in the document came mostly from our existing transportation plan. And within the transportation plan, many of these objectives are actually action items. And so we wouldn't, that will be changing when we get the next draft based on the CAC recommendation and making it match our previous block
Format.
block format. Yeah. So excellent. And then I think that hearing Commissioner Bance's comments about going through and making notes on these other ones, when we're through with your policy language, Erica, will we have time to go through and pick up notes from the commissioners on these items?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bance has his hand raised. I'm not sure what order we have.
Not anymore. I'm good.
Okay, Councillor Scott. He went away. They're dropping like flies. Commissioner Widola.
Okay, and I was going to let everybody else go before me too, because I was going to pontificate here just a little bit. Just for those of you who do not know, my employment through a couple different employers is smart cities, IoT, 5G, network construction, things along those lines. So that's where my expertise sort of relies. I do that currently for Verizon today. I actually work in what's called the Verizon Smart Communities Organization. And so I do have a lot of expertise in these areas here. And as we look at a couple different things here, the Sherwood broadband, and I think it was, we covered it a few minutes ago, was something that was just really brilliant in my opinion, was and I forget which policy we were on, forgive me here, but it's I should do my notes much better. Maybe we haven't gotten there yet. No, we covered it. But for putting in more conduit and requirements for, extra conduit for new areas, that's absolutely brilliant. That's huge for Sherwood. I think, from a standpoint for the city, that's future rental space. They can charge the carriers, they can charge everybody else the rentals to be in there, and puts them in a great position. So that's good. And going to more generic on this particular policy is the right move, I think, there. As we move forward and building out the networks there, whether it's Sherwood Broadband or any of the other ISPs out there. So that's it.
Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Yeah, I have my mute off now.
Sorry.
Commissioner Widola, echo everything you just said, and stay tuned to some of the stuff we're doing on council here. We're making some big investments in Sherwood Broadband. My comments are really around, the top section talks about, Sherwood Broadband, fiber rollout, and then it says with the additional provision of wireless infrastructure. So who's provisioning the wireless infrastructure and where? And I don't how is the city then? That's got to be provisioned by somebody before the city can leverage it. The only other thing I would add is that I think we need to add, tweak the language a little bit. We need to support, and maybe this is obvious, but I have a big fear. I'm a big technology guy. I work in technology. I have my whole career. But what I see in the marketplace a lot of times, and with public, in the public a lot of times, is what I like to term technology for the sake of technology. And I think there's a danger with some of the smart city stuff, right? you get caught up in the coolness factor of it, and without really making sure, A, is it actually solving a problem, and B, is it actually reducing cost? Because, you know, I can go spend an extra $1,000 and have a TV screen in my refrigerator, but it doesn't really solve a need. It's just a cool gadget that I'm spending $1,000 for. And so I think we need to make sure that, you know, we're supporting smart city applications or smart city applications where appropriate.
Right.
Cost effective.
Cost
Yeah.
effective.
Yeah.
So generic name, not Sherwood Broadband, and some more support cost-effective smart city applications.
And then, yeah, I just had the question about who's rolling out wireless.
So is this explanation that you're providing in the paragraph above, is that, Erica, where is that coming from, and how is that going to be implemented in the comprehensive plan?
That's a great question. So how it's gonna be implemented in the comprehensive plan is it'll provide some context, you know, in that chapter when we talk about, you know, broadband. So in our infrastructure chapter in the comp plan, we'll have like headings for, you know, transportation. We'll talk about you know, transportations and some new themes, and we'll talk about green, you know, we'll have another heading about green infrastructure and, you know, new policy concepts around green infrastructure, and then we'll have a little statement for broadband and this new policy. So this will kind of help explain in the document itself what we mean by or how we want to expand broadband in the future.
So are you saying that you're going to have this explanation
or something like it? I can't say this is right
for each policy?
Yes. So for each like new policy theme, we'll have some sort of introduction.
Is that true in all the other blocks?
Because
yes.
And so in the background documents for the other blocks, we'll be pulling out some of that language in the background document and putting it into the text of the comprehensive plan. We're just not there yet.
Okay, because
you'll see it all for sure.
I understand we'll see it all, but what I've heard from this conversation and many others is that we start providing such detail both in carriers' names and actual titles of projects. We're kind of tying ourselves to things that don't have a 20-year vision. They have a point in time reference. So, okay. I was surprised to hear that this explanation is going to be printed in the comprehensive plan, because that is
something I can't say this is going to be the exact, you know, paragraph that's going to be in the comprehensive plan, but we'll have to provide some context in the plan document itself.
Yeah, and I would say, especially in the context of technology, being less specific is better.
It's more, right.
I mean, if you think back to what kind of things would have been in this 20 years ago and how many of them are completely meaningless now.
Right.
Provide dial-up modem for everybody in the community.
We'll DSL anyways, yeah.
All right. So this is getting to our takeaways from our online survey. So we had an online survey about these new policy themes that was up online between December 21st and January 8th. And we received 162 responses. Most of the respondents supported all four policy concepts. Safe routes to school was somewhat more, more popular than broadband was somewhat less popular, but largely everyone favored these policy concepts. Some feedback that we we received in the survey was people had concerns about, cost and taxes, and of course, traffic congestion, pedestrian safety were the common concerns with transportation. Here's
Apparently,
a little.
people aren't aware that we cannot raise their taxes, even if we want to.
So here's a little pie chart description for all of the answers that we received on the survey itself. Are there any questions? Sorry, I can't see any hands.
No, we can move on and go to the next one.
Who doesn't like broadband?
The observation that's most interesting to me on this chart is that while Safe Routes to School enjoyed the highest percentage of likes, it also had the highest percentage of dislikes.
And again, there too, who doesn't want safe routes to schools?
I think the question is, out of context, what are you voting against?
Yeah.
As always.
Yeah. Counselor Scott, oh, you went away.
Okay. So in speaking with our stakeholders, and just like new things coming out of transportation in this plan document, we are going to be expanding the term for transportation disadvantage to include race. We have explicitly called out energy efficiency, and then we're looking at calling out universal access in our transportation system design. For infrastructure and energy, we are looking at, the of calling out the role of the development code for encouraging development or encouraging energy and climate friendly practices. Also in the new draft policies, you will see, we might call out promoting the development of electric vehicle charging stations. And then, identifying partner and agencies to coordinate with and providing service delivery.
Commissioner Widola, you had your hand raised.
Well, I guess, do you want my notes from this right now, or do you want me to wait till the end, or do you just, this is where we're at and there's no room for notes or comments?
There's always room for comments. And so if you want to provide, if you have comments written down, you can email them to me after the meeting, or if you want to bring up some specific comments for the entire commission to hear,
What I was hoping is once Erica completed her PowerPoint, is that we could hit the packet pages 9 through 15 and see if anybody had any major concerns, realizing that they're going to be adjusted a bit from the what we're seeing based on the CAC comments. Can you go back one slide?
Yes.
Erica, again, I would like to call out a concern that these are policies that are being added based on stakeholder comments that are not the citizens, that they are Metro, TriMet, Clean Water Services. I mean, PGE is promoting the development of electric vehicle charging stations. Is that what? I mean, I don't know if that's for sure or not, but if PGE is promoting that, is that, is that the same as, another retail establishment promoting their business? Let's get more electric vehicle charging stations out there built by the city instead of, having private development. That's what came out of the CAC, was not having commercial advertisement in the middle of our comprehensive plan. So, Commissioner Widola?
Well, on that particular topic, where the encouragement would be, and maybe in the Planning Commission and in this particular document, is somehow figuring out a way to find the language to incent, where I see a gap in this is multi-unit housing for charging for electric vehicles. That's a huge gap in the community where if you live in an apartment and you've got a Honda Leaf or whatever, you have to run an extension cord to charge your vehicle at home at night, which is the cheapest and best way to charge your vehicles each day. And so that's where I see, when I was going through this, is if we can find a way to encourage that and find the right language and the aspirational tone to figure out how to state that, because I think there's 15 or I don't know, maybe a half dozen charging stations here in Sherwood already between Charge America and all the other third parties that are out there. But the people need it in the residential, so maybe that's, if we can encourage that from the residential development standpoint to do that from incentives. I don't know, but that's where I see that playing out.
When you say that, it makes perfect sense, because it's just like a bicycle parking space at that point. Encouraging by providing, they have to have one, after they have 25 units, they have to have at least one charging station. And conversely, would you want to encourage or incentivize the industrial and commercial areas to do the same thing? So I know we have to run extension cords at my office for a couple of cars that are electric also. So same scenario. So I guess my caution was, when it was presented more at the CAC, the concerns were making sure that it was citizen driven, not just a stakeholder or a metro plan. So
I agree with that.
All right. Is that your last slide, Erica? Or no, you have another one.
I just have one more slide here.
Sorry.
So we asked two questions about these objectives. So objective 1.4 is really, the city shall encourage the availability and use of more energy efficient transportation alternatives by, and then it lists, the different ways that we can achieve that. We asked the question to the CAC and our TAC if the city should explicitly call out the concept of a 20-minute neighborhood. And a 20-minute neighborhood is kind of this, it's a planning concept. And I do know that in the Sherwood West preliminary concept plan, we don't explicitly call out a 20-minute neighborhood, but we do, talk about how, when we create neighborhoods, they should provide, opportunities for services within a quarter of a mile for people to walk and bike. And maybe we don't need to call it out as a concept. I think what we heard from the CAC was we don't necessarily need to call it out, because that last bullet point really talks about encouraging the development of self-supporting neighborhoods by providing a wide range of land use activities within a single area.
And I think the CAC expanded on that by saying that the 20-minute neighborhood is a phrase that may not be as well understood by the general public as a self-supporting neighborhood. Just the phraseology.
Right. So I think we're gonna keep the language of just self-supporting neighborhoods in that objective.
Excellent. Commissioner Kai has a comment.
Yeah, I'm basically just kind of agreeing with your line of thinking on that, Erica. And mostly, I'm just kind of curious, because the 20-minute neighborhood, is that like, I don't know if, to me, Sherwood doesn't feel large enough to have kind of like these additional concentrations of either commercial or I think of like bigger cities like Portland or San Francisco. You have Main Street areas that support those neighborhoods. It doesn't seem like we're large enough for that type of concept. Is that what it's talking about, or am I thinking of something wholly different than what 20-minute neighborhoods is referencing to?
I think it's just really referencing to the different land uses within an area that people can, walk and bike to, and maybe you don't necessarily have to have a main street per se. Maybe there's just a corner store, or something that offers, or a coffee shop that offers amenities that people can walk and bike to, instead of getting into their car and driving to the Starbucks in the center of town.
Because if it's between the two, I definitely do think the language in that last point of 1.4 is much works much better, especially for the size of type of city that Sherwood is. So
right,
it's more intuitive.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right, Councilor
And
Scott,
then-
you had a comment?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot tonight. So first of all, I fully support the concept of self-supporting neighborhoods, and I think we should encourage them. But I also think we should have realistic expectations. I think there's kind of a, we've seen, like look to Villebois as an example. They had this vision of having a self-supportive neighborhood, and I think they got a couple of small shops in their little downtown core, but I wouldn't call it self-supporting. There's no, there's no grocery store, and maybe that's a little bit beyond the. But I think the point being, though, like, it's great. It's a great aspirational goal. I think. Do I expect to see it actually play out? In within 20 years in Sherwood? That seems like unlikely, but we should certainly try. I think it also, what's interesting is it's the the move away from mom and pop stores to everybody being a mass corporation really actually works against this goal, right? Like if you think back to 100 years ago when you had self-supporting neighborhoods, but partly was because everybody had their little shop and they lived above their shop, and they and everybody knew everybody and they all shopped there. But now it's all like Walgreens or Safeway isn't going to put a store in a little self-supporting neighborhood because there's not enough people. So anyway, I'm just rambling, but I think it's a great idea. I don't know how effective it can be out here, but we should try.
And then in the objective 2.5, it states work with Metro and other regional transportation partners to implement regional transportation demand management programs where appropriate. And then our question to the CAC and our TAC is that we should we list some examples of transportation demand management programs, because the average person probably doesn't even know what that necessarily means. And transportation demand programs can include, car sharing, van pooling, walking, bicycling, and other programs that just promote, different, different strategies to encourage people not to drive, alone, single, in their car, single occupancy, and whatnot. However, now that we're kind of changing, I just want to take a step back. Now that we're changing the way we are looking at our transportation goals and policies in that document, we actually might take out this objective because it's already part of our TSP. So I'm just throwing that out there too. I don't think we need to spend too much time actually on this question.
Perfect. Thank you. And as we said before, less is more, allows more visionary, more ideas that we haven't even thought of in the next 20 years.
Right. So we'll be having a joint Planning Commission City Council meeting on March 2nd. You'll be getting an updated goals and policies list for this comprehensive plan theme in the next 2 weeks before that March 2nd meeting. And then we're going to be kicking off our final comprehensive block theme, which is healthy and valued ecosystems. And we are scheduling a CAC meeting at the end of February to kick off this theme.
So before we move off the plan, I'd like to hear, I know that a few of the commissioners had questions, and I don't know, starting on page 9 is when we have policy 1 and objectives 1.4, 1.1 through 1.9. And if anybody has any comments or notes for that policy 1 or the objectives 1.1 to 1.9, can we take those comments for staff? Commissioner Widola?
Apologize, my internet's super slow today. The only thing I have is on 1.6, and it came up earlier, the transportation disadvantage. One of the terms that's being used around other transportation agencies here in town is communities of concern, is what they're using to describe those folks. So I don't know if I just want to throw that out there, if maybe the committee wants to consider that term, because it really brings in English as a second language, immigrant population, race, everything sort of gets condensed into that. So I just wanted to throw that out there for you under 1.6.
Then, so instead of starting to list the group of people, we can just say disadvantaged, including communities of concern, or keep all the other items and add that?
I'd recommend you using that because it's more flexible, not being too specific to leave out, because, okay, we've got, this group, but what about this group? What about this group? What about recent immigrants, refugees? What about people, whether they're Russian immigrants or immigrants coming from South and Central America? How do we sort of, bring all the people that may be struggling with finding the transportation? And then also on 1.6, just before I forget, is should it say foster transportation services for the transportation disadvantage, or should it 2?
4. Yeah. Excellent. I like the way that's modified, because then as different groups of people are identified, our transportation plan adjusts for all of those potential variables. Thank you. That's great. All right. Do you have any? So you just, Commissioner Widola, that's all in policy 1? Okay. Commissioner Bantz, go ahead. Commissioner Bantz.
Actually, that was going to be one of mine. I was concerned about that. Just adding race seemed not, I mean, when you read the list, including the young, the elderly, people of color, people with disabilities, it's like I go through this and I go, okay, young because they're too young to drive, elderly, some of them are just too old to drive, low incomes, they can't afford, people of color because they can't, like, I just seem kind of like grouping a whole, like, seem kind of condescending.
Yes.
I mean, I like the approach that we just heard, because that kind of creates some flexibility. So you jumped the gun on me, and so I really have nothing else to add. I think it's more appropriate. Yep.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. So no other hands. I'm going to move on to policy 2, and we have objectives 2.1 through 2.6. Does anybody have any comments on that? Sorry, that was me running away from the computer to answer my door. Sorry. I'm back now. And there's no yellow highlights. So policy 3, and again, it looks like a lot of these objectives in 3.1 to 3.12 are going to become action items instead of remaining within the comprehensive plan. So
that's correct.
And Erica's nodding her head, so we'll I don't see any hands raising. Does anybody have any comments on policy 4? We have objectives 4.1 through 4.6. And we've discussed 4.6 quite a bit. Commissioner Widola.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm not sure where this belongs, but in the notes we got from the meetings that were the interviews that were done, someone mentioned there was a lot of tensions around the role and function of Highway 99. And then also I've read in the local paper just last week that Sherwood North was off the table from the developer standpoint. And so I guess my question, and maybe it should have been more of a policy 3 in the transportation, is understanding our partners with Metro, State DOT, and whoever on that corridor, trying to figure out, and maybe it's too specific for this, but it seems like that can be a bit of an inhibitant to, or a bit of a roadblock and a speed bump for us to getting things done. And I just wasn't sure on when it comes to the tensions. And I know we're having to guess into this, that who are the tensions between? Are the tensions between the city, and I'm sorry to bring this up right now, but it falls on the transportation side. Is it between the city and the different partner agencies, or is it maybe between the developers and the state and the agencies that they work with? I mean, I'm trying to figure that out to see if we can identify that, then is there something we can put in the aspirational goals and the 20-year outlook that can help solve for that?
Sorry, I'm just jotting down notes. I think it could. I think it's a little bit of everything that you just said. Between expectations from ODOT and developers, and expectations between the city and our different transportation partners. Around improvements to 99. I think it's a mix. It's certainly a mix.
It could also be perception with, we don't control Highway 99 or 12th and Sherwood Road. So as development comes in, we don't have any ability to make change, or even Brookman. That was a good example that we don't have control over that. And there's tension between our ability to govern our own community and what our community members want and what we're forced to comply with under the transportation policies of ODOT and Washington County. So it may be a policy that we work with our partner agencies to help facilitate the goals and needs of our community, but we still have to we're still subservient to their overall needs, which goes back to that what the road's for, and those roads are meant to move transportation, or to move truck traffic and car traffic, and that's their goal, is to move it efficiently. So
where does that stop is my question, because does it stop in Tigard? Is that where the border is, where it's more of a, while it's still that purpose, you still got businesses, really built in up and down on 99W there in Old Town Tigard, and the strip between Old Town all the way up to Bull Mountain?
ODOT still controls it, as far as I understand it. They
still control it, but is it considered primarily commerce or primarily, trucking and cars?
I'm sure some of it just goes to history, right? That got built out sooner. And then, by the, when ODOT started really getting, the power to start controlling the access points, that it was too far gone in Tigard, right? But they were able to say, okay, well, we're going to put our foot down on, because at that point in time, Sherwood was, barely an intersection, right? There was nobody here. So
one 6-corner intersection.
Right. So they were able to basically implement rules at that point in time that wrote, limited access, divided highway into, perpetuity, right? So I think it's just timing more than anything.
All right. Sorry if that was off topic, but thank you.
No, but I think it's still important that we try to continue to work with them to keep our community, because as Sherwood develops and we add these intersections on Highway 99 that become lighted intersection, ODOT has made comment that the speed designations that coming into Sherwood will be reduced at some point once development occurs enough further south on Highway 99. Those speeds will be reduced further south. So it is, you know, it's a balancing act between both of us. Commissioner Bantz.
Yeah, I might be intuiting the answer to this already through our rest of our conversation. But 4.1 it speaks to provide a supportive transportation network to the land use plan that provides opportunities for transportation choices and eliminates barriers to creating a universally acceptable or accessible transportation system. So I guess I'm just curious what's in mind when those words are like, what kind of barriers currently exist to a accessible transportation system? Like, what are we needing to be cognizant of with this goal? Or is it just like keeping in mind as we're planning that kind of concept? Is that the idea here?
I think the idea is keeping in mind when we're planning to eliminate barriers. In that policy.
So there's nothing that comes to mind that's like currently we don't allow X and we should be thinking about doing away with that. Like that's kind of where it's going. Yeah.
Also, to add to that, I don't see where that's forwarding our plan or a policy or an objective. You know, clearly, I mean, it doesn't have a what barriers. Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Harsh.
Am I on mute? Is that better? Sorry. Commissioner Weddle, you just said that did I miss news that the north expansion, that pre plan development meeting we had a couple months ago, that is now dead, that project? The one that was up by...
Yeah, that was in the Sherwood Gazette last week, I believe, an article I read that the developer, it was cost prohibitive to do the work needed via the ODOT, and I think there was a mention to Metro too. I'll go back and find the article and forward it to the team.
And that was the development we looked at, that split half on each side of 99 and kind of came down to, okay, that's unfortunate. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, very unfortunate.
Yeah. The developer Deacon sent an email to council and staff, and it was, I think they did a really good job, but they did notify it before it came out in the Gazette that they had withdrawn. So,
thank you.
All right. Any other comments? I don't see any hand raises, so we're going to go to policy 5, and we have objectives 5.1 through 5.7, which staff did not highlight anything. Again, it looks like a lot of these are action items that'll be moved to the action plan and removed from that. Did I miss? So we go from policy 5 to policy 7. So, yes. Any comments other than I thought I was losing my mind for a moment? Policy 7 and objectives 1 through 6, and policy 8, objectives 8.1 through 8.5. Again, staff did not highlight any questions or direction they were looking for on this.
I had a question regarding 7.4. Why are we, as policy, encouraging the preservation of rail rights? I mean, aren't they inherently already protected? Why do we need to speak to that?
Good question. Do we have to have that in our comprehensive plan, Erica?
I don't have the exact answer for you this evening. I do know in the state land use goal, it talks about that we need to address all the transportation uses within Sherwood. Yes. That would include rail. Okay. So we probably need to address it in some way per the state land use goal requirement. But that's something I can definitely look into.
I was just, curious because in looking at some of these other development stuff we worked on, having to approach a railway crossing at what, a 90-degree angle, some of these requirements for these road construction they were looking at, and how lightly these rails are used, you'll even wonder if they're even functioning railroads, right? There's a concern about the inconvenience to the community these are causing when they're not actually, they're like legacy rights that aren't being applied.
All right, Commissioner Bantz.
Yeah, sorry, I'm going to back this up to policy 5.1 just really quick. Just a point of clarification, I'm wondering if we should be a little bit more specific than the term all parts. So work with TriMet to expand transit services to all parts. Like, I'm guessing that doesn't mean TriMet buses running through our neighborhood streets all day long, or maybe it does. I don't know, but maybe that's something we target a little bit more for certain areas, business areas, something like that.
Maybe core areas.
Appropriate segments, appropriate sections, appropriate areas.
Mm-hmm.
Something better than turning left and leaving and charging us taxes if we're downtown.
Working on that right now.
I had Councilman Scott. I had a company based out of Sherwood for almost 10 years, and it paid me every time I wrote that TriMet tax out of my payroll tax every quarter.
On an interesting note, with the road closure in front of Railroad Street, the TriMet buses have been doing an alternate route, all summer and fall and now winter. And the feedback we got from TriMet is the drivers love it because they don't have to snake through Old Town and make all those tight left-hand corners. So they're looking to have a permanently changed route, which coincidentally so do I and some other people on council. So like most things in government, it's like a 2-year process to change the route. So it might take a while, but we're working on it.
Well, next time we not need a bus route change, we'll just throw up another tent.
Did we get an extension on that tent since you mentioned that? Because I thought that had to come out a couple months ago. How far did it go?
I think there must have been an extension.
Oh, you didn't.
Yeah, I believe that Joe extended it through the end of March now.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, so we've moved past transportation. We're now in the infrastructure and energy and the policies within that area. Policy 1 has objectives 1 through 5. There's a call out from staff on the growth plan. We've already discussed that. We're going to generalize the provider and maybe look at the language about smart city applications. You have the notes.
And I would encourage you to change the word fiber too, because again, if we go back 20, 30 years in technology, we may not be using wired infrastructure, right? So fiber is another kind of wire. So it would be maybe to expand high speed connectivity for all users in support of city applications.
Well, maybe. The council or this group could prefer a hardwired connection because there's more stability to it. So maybe it's just worth talking about. But I know what you're saying. I totally get it. But there are advantages to hardwiring as well.
Yes, sir. I'm just saying that's a
but fiber is specific. You're right. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Digital connectivity from a layman.
I don't know even digital, but I think the word broadband covers it quite nicely. Just develop a growth plan for broadband services for all users and support. It's just a pipe, whether it's a wired pipe, wireless pipe, whatever it may be.
Yep.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you. Policy 2 works with partner agencies to coordinate. I think what we've heard before is it's complicated because Sherwood School District is the Sherwood School District, and Portland. You'd think Portland General Electric wouldn't change, and neither would Northwest Natural Gas, but we know Clean Water Services used to be Unified Sewerage Agency, so agencies can change their names. So, making it generic or not, I'm not married to it either way. Commissioner Widola, help me.
Yeah, well, what I'm thinking of, and with my experience, is anybody who's got a franchise agreement with the city to be in the right of way, is there a way we can craft language around that to be more generic? Because, you know, everyone who has the rights to be in the right of way is who we're talking about. But at a minimum, where it's not a natural monopoly like river, like water and sewer and things along those lines, I would go with a generic term for like Comcast Frontier, at least with ISPs or something along those lines.
Excellent. And then cities called or staff's called out objectives 2.2 and 2.3. Do you need further direction on those at this point? Okay. You're mute, but you're shaking your head no. So I'm moving on to energy. And flipping over to the next page, there's policy 1, a lot of objectives 1 through 4. Are these the ads that came through the stakeholders like PGE and such? Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Widola, I missed you.
Oh, go ahead, finish your thought, and then I'll jump in.
I didn't have a thought. I was just wondering where objectives 1 through 4 came through for energy. Was that from the stakeholders?
Yes, there are conversations with the stakeholders on future trends.
Okay, and these look more like actionable items instead of goals within the comprehensive plan. So, Commissioner Widola.
So on the heading here for policy 1, minimize petroleum-based energy use, encourage use. Isn't using the word petroleum going to be too specific? Should we be renewable versus non-renewable or something along those lines? Because are we doing petroleum, but hey, let's fire up a coal plant and that's okay because that's not petroleum? I mean, so I just want to make sure we got the right language there.
Oh, that's great.
Excellent.
Is that term?
And my computer's going to die on me, so I'm going to change offices to where my power is, and I'll be back in a moment.
Okay. And policy 2 then.
Nope. Hang on, I got one.
Oh, sorry,
one.
Commissioner Bant, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I'm kind of glad you mentioned this is where these are coming from, because this would be one of those areas that I'd really be interested in the community feedback component. Especially, I mean, objective 1 clearly is pushing toward mass transit stuff. I mean, are people really wanting to give up vehicles? Like, is that what our community wants and move to mass transit stuff? And then what was more interesting is objective 1.1 almost conflicts with 1.4, which is actually promoting use of vehicles of a different kind. So do we want no vehicles in mass transit, or do we want more vehicles that are just different kinds? And I thought that was interesting. I do think there probably is more of a trend in the electric vehicle front, but I would just be very curious to see what our community wants to do here, more than just kind of plop these in.
Well, and should we roll those into one statement? Should 1.4 and 1.1 become the same and clean it up?
Well, one specifically asking us to adjust our land use patterns so that we are reducing the dependency on any type of automobile and encouraging the use of mass transit. I would call out, is this what our citizens want? I mean, first off, is this part of the state required concepts that we have to incorporate into our plan? And if it's a state required goal, then we can craft the language based on what the state goal is within our community. And then if it's not a statewide goal, then is it something our community is interested in versus TriMet?
I mean, they complain a lot about parking, which tells you they like to drive, right?
Yes.
So,
well, yeah. And why do we flip-flop between promote and encourage in our language here? These different ones is
probably came from the source document that they were pulling the information from. The recent council direction has been to provide flexibility within the comprehensive plan that doesn't tie us and force us to do something. So encourage is the
action word. Gotcha.
Yeah, not ensure or provide, we want to encourage and foster or develop or something. So.
Okay.
So do you have enough to answer, to bring back to when you bring back the draft, noting our concern about whether this is a state requirement on the
Yes.
mass transit? All right,
Mhm.
cool. Thank you. Moving on to policy 2, you've highlighted 2.2, ensure responsive development code and standards that reflect emerging trends for addressing energy and climate change challenges and opportunities. Again, that I believe came from one of the stakeholders' comments. Is that true, or is that a state goal?
The state goal, around energy is pretty broad about, reducing energy impacts and, being climate friendly and,
Because what we had heard before, the reason I'm asking about climate change, because when we had gone through this before in a previous block, the CAC expressed concern about the city trying to tackle climate change at a city level when this is a federally or state mandated program. So implementing a climate change, we can have a vision or something about it, but we can't implement policies that are going to be, it's unlikely that we would do something that's more strict than what federal or state's doing, because we're not experts, nor are we going to put out funds that would make us experts above what the state and federal's doing. So that would be my concern about us trying to address climate change at a city level.
That, and again, this would be good to get feedback from the community, especially if we need to understand, certain measures that you could take here come with great cost. I mean, even at the federal level, the stuff they talk about is really expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so to what extent, community, do you want a goal like this, and would you be willing to be taxed for it? That kind of stuff. Not that apparently we can do taxes. I don't know. I mean, I don't know exactly how this would work, but it seems like those are the kinds of things to talk about, I guess.
Yeah, and emerging trends and addressing energy challenges and opportunities. I mean, that would be the trade-off that the community would have to weigh into, because do we want to require that every house have solar panels on it so we can reduce our carbon footprint? The trade-off on that is there's the affordability of houses would be changed based on that. So it's a really good discussion to have.
Right. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Thank
you. Commissioner Simmons, I was just going to ask if we had a adversity to solar panels, because it's been a minute since I read the building code. Do we leave it down to the HOAs in our city code at this point for things like solar panels?
I don't know.
Oh, I'm not the only one who doesn't know. Okay.
I don't know I don't know who drives solar panels and what happens with them.
Are they allowed by our current building code, Erica?
Yes. So solar panels are allowed, whether or not you can use them. If you live in a subdivision that has an HOA, they might have different standards.
That's what I just didn't know. I've never seen any in Sherwood in the time I've been here. It's 20 years. Huh. I can't think of any.
There's not enough sun.
This from the person who moved from the southern part. Commissioner Widola.
Yeah, real quick. So come down Roy Rogers. There's a house just past Borchers that has solar panels that faces the road, the south and the west. So you can see there's a good example. There's a lot of solar panels there.
Right. You're right.
I see the objective 2.2, and I'm going to do solar sooner or later. On 2.2, I read this as not necessarily, saying put solar in, make all these houses to Chair Simpson's comment that it becomes expensive housing, but more of, can we encourage code that makes it easier for people to future install whatever the most, simple to use renewable home energy is. Or maybe, the other thing too is I'm sure there's something in code preventing us from putting a mini windmill, a mini wind turbine up in our property to produce electricity, but that might be something to consider in the future. So, not being too specific, but understanding that all those things help lower greenhouse and all the other fun things that we can do at a local level.
Okay.
Rick, when you decide who you're going to use for solar, let me know.
I already know. I just have to decide if I'm going to invest in this house or another house. So I'll let you know.
Okay. Well, you and I will have a conversation later then.
There's actually a house in Old Town. I drove past it in the, it's way back in the back corner of Old Town that has almost their whole roof and solar panels. So that's good.
Yeah.
So energy responsive development code standards that reflect emerging trends for addressing energy and climate change challenges and opportunities. Okay. And I guess I was just worried about how we're going to be addressing it as a city. So, but if we can incorporate it and make a better code out of it so that it's easier for someone to do the right thing, that's perfect. All right. Last one is policy 3, objectives 3.1 to 3.5. I don't see any call outs by staff. So excellent. All right, Erica, you've got your homework.
On that one, I just, on 3.3, I guess just efficient lighting, as long as it still lights. some of the efficient lighting out there isn't great lighting, but I'm sure there's technology is always improving. They'd be fine. I thought 3.4 is kind of interesting. Wind orientation. I don't know what the vision is for that, but wind farms in Sherwood is. There's not really sure what the sun I get because we're talking about solar panels and houses and stuff, but those wind turbine things are huge. I don't know if that's part of the vision here.
Well, and again, do we need to even make a statement about this? Unless we're obligated, it seems very odd.
So are we going, this might be one of those statements that we're pulling, came from the transportation code or our existing plan?
So that came from the existing plan because we need to address energy through our state land use goal requirement. Okay. So that policy and objective language already exists in our current comprehensive plan.
And that was probably when it was a form-based code, not form-based, but the addressing each one of the goals within the state. And so someone was filling in the checkbox for the state requirements.
Right.
I would say on objective 3.3, what I really get offended by is light pollution. I think it is, especially when we have floodlights pointing off into natural resource areas, places that are supposed to be our greenway buffers, and just calling it out, the floodlights that are, when I go towards town on Oregon Street, there are new floodlights in a converted parking lot. So when you're heading towards that corner, you can't see anything except 6 floodlights coming right at you. So that is, to me, light pollution. And I know that we've had other neighborhoods where new city light poles were put up and they created pollution into the neighbor's backyard. So I think being more clear that light pollution is a problem.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
And yeah, I think the language there isn't very clear.
And I think 3.5 has kind of come up in the context of House Bill 2001 a little bit as well. Land conservation stuff, especially in thinking about very low density and all that. Otherwise, I didn't have, it was just kind of a comment.
Nice. For conservation.
Use of landscaping.
Yes.
That kind of thing. Yeah. That's what clued me in.
All right. Any other comments before we? The last two items on our agenda are the comprehensive item 3, comprehensive plan, action plan. And I think that was the chart that you provided to us.
Correct. And so I'm just going to share my screen again really quick. Hold on.
So we're getting later than I thought we were going to. So is this how long a presentation? Because I don't know if we need to take a 5-minute break before we move on, or is this a 5-minute presentation?
I think it's going to be a little bit longer than 5 minutes. I think I just want to have a conversation with the commission in regards to the action and strategy items provided in the matrix.
Okay. I think since we are able to all mute and turn off our cameras, does anybody want to take a break before we move on, or can we just plow right through the next one? Okay.
I'm good with plowing through.
Okay, let's plow through then.
Agreed.
All right. So in your document, you have the first comprehensive plan block theme, our thriving and diversified economy. And this is what we're doing is we're putting together a action strategy plan. And what this plan will do, it will be a work plan for the city to actually implement the objectives in the comprehensive plan. This will be a separate document. This will be reviewed by Planning Commission and City Council and accepted by resolution. And we expect this work plan to change. It's a living document. It'll change, from year to year. And if I'm just going to go through the way it's set up. I think this is a good way for the new planning commissioners to get a sense of the work that's already been done on the comprehensive plan. So it starts off with the vision statement for this comprehensive block theme. Then underneath it, we have our first goal. And then we have highlighted here our objectives for that goal. And then we have our different columns here. What we call out specific action and strategy items. Who or like what departments in the city will be working on that action strategy, as well as different possible city committees. We can add that as well. We have is this an ongoing item? And then we have a column over here for funding costs, and we can list out funding for those action strategies. So our goals and objectives, we've already have reviewed them through the comprehensive plan process. Now, the new thing that we're looking at is this action strategy statement that will actually implement the objectives that we're calling out. And in this plan document, not every single objective is going to have an action or strategy item associated with it. It could in the future, but the ones that we've created, that staff has created now, not all of our objectives have action and strategy items associated with each one. I don't know how you how you would want to go about this, Jean. If we just want to go through objective and the action strategies line by line, or if commissioners have already read this document, and if you have any red flags or questions in regards to these action items and strategies.
I would see us doing it similar to how we did the objectives policies and objectives in the last one. We can do objective, or goal 1 has 8 objectives. I'm getting lost between, there we go, 2. Sorry, got lost between 1 and 2. So 1.1 through 1.8. And if anybody has any highlighted questions or concerns that they have regarding those items. To me, this is the perfect work program for the city council, or the city council can refer to this for their capital improvement project when they're doing their goal setting sections. I guess my one question would be, how would this be managed and parsed out when it comes time for council, or if it, like, when we get to the next block, it's easy because it's almost all about parks. So the goals, the objectives, and the action items are all going to be related to the Parks Board, and they'll be referring to the parks action items within there. So when it's not as a 1-for-1 from one block to a particular board and commission, when we talk about like thriving and diversified economy, is there a staff member or a board or commission that's directly assigned to each one of these blocks so that the action plan gets updated and called to the council's planning?
Yeah, so what I've tried to do here is I've tried to do that through the who column there. So in the first objective, we've kind of called out who would be in charge of that action or strategy, and we've put community development and our administration staff, which is, you know, our city manager, and so they would kind of they would be the ones that would be taking on this action or strategy item and bringing it, you know, to council's attention through, you know, either goal setting, you know, either through the goal setting process every year or through some other mechanism, you know, with city council.
So does the community development department take ownership of the thriving and diversified economy block?
I would say that the community development department takes on a lot of the thriving and diversified economy block along with our administration.
Because I guess when we get to the point of this becomes a document, then once it's printed, who goes back and says, I'm going to take ownership of this and add action items, remove action items, and drive action items to completion instead of just individual items? Because that's what I would be concerned about.
Right.
That was my question. Sorry, I had it up for. Yeah, I was going to ask how is this, because this is getting reviewed once a year, right?
Correct. So since this is driven from the comprehensive plan itself, the community development department would be the one taking on this document, you know, making sure that it's getting implemented through all the different departments.
So I'm guessing it would be me. As I'm listening, I'm like, I guess it's going to be me ultimately.
All right, Julia. Okay, so
thanks a lot, Erica.
No, and you know what I truly envision, you know, with this document too, and having this work plan is coming back to Planning Commission every 6 months and kind of reporting on each goal and what the city has undertaken to, you know, implement the objectives in our plan.
So, like it's the infrastructure block that we just completed. Once we get it into the format that's goals, objectives, it seems like mostly that might be more static than, you know, the economy one, because that's the infrastructure part's pretty, you know, there's boundaries that they work in.
Right.
Yeah, and there's already adopted plans and things that there's things in place. So you know, it's not like there's going to be tons of action items on every single block, but just knowing that Julia and the community development department is the driver, and that there'll be check-in points, annually or every 6 months, or each block gets an update once a month or every other month is encouraging. So it's hard to go through all these action items and then know that it's not going to just be put up on a shelf and forgotten about.
Yeah, the way I envisioned it in talking with Erica, is that it's really kind of a blueprint for implementation, and they're going to differ depending on what the block is or what the specific action item is. It might be something that really helps us focus on grants. It might be something that helps inform the CIP. It might be something that helps inform some, just staff direction. So it's gonna vary, but ultimately it's going to be up to community development and to a certain extent, of course, administration and ultimately council in terms of their goals and goal setting and stuff like that. But I think it's going to be a combination of a lot of efforts, and this is really outlining so that we're not just adopting the comprehensive plan and setting that on a shelf. We actually have tangible things that we know what we need to be doing to implement the comprehensive plan.
That's exciting, because I don't know if anybody has ever, other than 3 people on this call, have ever seen the comprehensive plan from 1990. So it's good to see that there's going to be actionable items and follow through. So back to our, does anybody have any comments, questions, or concerns on the goal 1 and the objectives within that goal? And I'll be honest. Oh, Commissioner Widola.
Yeah, I do have a question. I don't know if it belongs in goal 1, 2, or 3, but I feel like we need to have language somewhere it talks about protect our assets. And the reason why I bring this up is the water treatment facility that took, one of our 2 major lots, and it's exactly opposite of what we wanted to happen to that property. So where can we, or how can we structure some language that talks about, finding we can't deny people who want to buy property, but it really flew in the face of, why I wanted to join the Planning Commission, is to have our community partners sort of take advantage of a prime piece of property to help them get their project done at really the detriment to Sherwood, with no benefit to our city. And so is there somewhere we can add an objective, about, protecting the Sherwood assets, or protecting the Sherwood, whatever it may be, or am I just way out in left field on this? I just feel really unfortunate about what went down last month or whatever, or November, whenever that was.
So in the thriving and diversified economy, that goes to higher wage jobs. How would you, I was looking at that versus land development and protecting the land zoning, and that's really.
Well, in particular, though, how can we stop them, particularly a PUD or something, from doing this anyways, right? I mean, if they have the money and it's available property, do we have any ability to stop that? Isn't that
Well, we can ensure that the development occurs based on our underlying zone, instead of having the zoning seem to be usurped by a different use.
Yeah, I think that comes to the zoning and what's allowed in that zone. If you don't want to allow any public, not utilities, but any public uses on private property, then you could change the zone, or through the processes, change the zones to not have that be a permitted use on the properties in the areas that you are wanting to protect.
So to help protect our thriving and diversified economy, we need to ensure that land develops in a manner that is beneficial to the community as a whole.
Tax favorable or something, maybe along. I mean, I'm trying to figure out what the right verbiage would be, but it seems like there's just something there because I don't want to use negative language to say we don't want any public development of our land here. That's not what I'm saying, but what I want to do is make sure it's a benefit. I mean, the whole Tonkin employment area was really about diversifying our economy, and one of the first two develop big projects is 50-50. I mean, one's good and one's a wash for us. So I don't know. I just wanted to throw that. That was my only comment on this entire section is what we can do to help protect that so we can have more, we can protect so there's not more non-tax revenue generating developments happening in areas that we need tax revenue generation.
So I think good news is this is the perfect time to get it into the comprehensive plan so that we can do it forward. I wouldn't call it an actionable item. I would call it more into the goals and objectives that we would go back and revisit to ensure whichever block that needs to go into, that when it comes back before council and commission for our hearings, that we ensure that idea is brought forth on it.
Could we use language in our underlying code that basically was much more explicit, like commercial, industrial, that, dial it down tighter so that something like a government agency can't come in and buy it effectively? I mean, is there some way of getting
within this document? We're not changing code. We're creating an idea that will enable us to go back and revisit the code language.
Okay. I guess it's the zoning, right? I guess what I'm trying to say is, can we get more explicit in our zoning language so that we call out specifically the kinds of things we'd want in there, and therefore leaving this out, right? We tend to be very general because we want to not be pushed into a corner, but maybe this is a case where we need to go the inverse and be very, very specific and list off the 23 kinds of properties development that would be beneficial for us, so they can't slip through.
Exactly, and that's and being able to put in a goal and a objective that defines the importance of that development zone and code allowed uses. That's where this is the first stepping stone for being able to change the code, is to put this policy in place that says in order to protect our tax base and our and diversify our economy, we want to ensure that development is beneficial to the community, or something smart like that Erica can write up for us.
Definitely.
Commissioner Wilder, did you have another comment before we?
Nope, just took my hand down.
All right, Commissioner Vance.
Yeah, and I generally agree with that. I mean, we have kind of a limitation to how much land we have, and I think my general comment on this thing is just kind of being careful with what we allow. And I'm sure this came up back when this was originally being discussed, way before I joined, what was happening, this goal. I mean, which part of what makes Sherwood is that it's a lot of, it's where people want to live. And, there aren't tons of people here who I think probably move here because they also want to work 5 minutes away. I think they like that kind of we're over here kind of thing. But I also get the tax need. That makes a lot of sense. So there just needs to be some kind of smartness to where do we add, appropriately to bring that in. And I think we're doing that, with the Sherwood North thing. I think it's the right location and all that stuff to be talking about that. It just seemed to me that it should be that was just kind of what hit me. I think I mentioned on Friday to some of the others that I don't know. I've always kind of felt Sherwood feels a little bit like the Sun River of the Portland area. There's a lot of homes, and it's a great place to live and interact and do things. And I don't need an industrial plant down the street necessarily. That's not why I'm here. But I also get that aspect of it, and we are a city, and we do need to kind of grow. So that's just a general comment. I think what's in here is fine. I think probably that was discussed, is my guess, to some degree. And there it is.
Excellent, thank you. And it was discussed because this particular block is it's like it's not the opposite, but it goes hand in hand with our housing block. So every time we try and do something here, we're countering with the housing block, and we are balancing between those two very important aspects of our community, our housing, which we've always been known for, and then trying to diversify our economy so we do have some sort of tax base and putting it in the right place. So like you said, Sherwood North was an appropriate siting because, you know, it would diversify our tax base, but not put it right in the backyard of the neighborhoods that are already existing. So.
Sure. And by the way, I'm still very hopeful that that water treatment plant connects with us and at least gets us a backup water supply. That, because I was with you guys on that call, you know, talking through that, like where that would be a benefit if we can get it at least.
Yeah, at least connect it to us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. All right, so moving on to goal 2 is prioritize, promote economic development to balance the city's tax base. And then there's objectives 2.1 to 2.8. And there's some actionable items brought out on there. Does anybody have any comments or concerns about these listed items? All right, then we'll move on to goal 3, plan and provide adequate infrastructure efficiently and timely to accelerate employment growth. And there are 3.1 through 3.6 for the objectives and action items related to that. I don't see anybody raising their hand, and I am encouraged by having these action items, and I know staff, because it is such a living document and that we'll be revisiting it 6 months and a year. Once we start to digest what all the other blocks mean and how these things start interacting with each other and what does this mean and how does it trigger this, the next time we see this, I'll probably feel a lot smarter and like I can actually provide some more input to it. So, Commissioner Bantz.
Yeah, and I agree. I think having action plans like this in line with goals is fantastic. It's a great idea. It's a good way to make sure that we're kind of on track and we don't just throw things out there and, you know, hope for the best. Just a technical note on 2.4 on it's one of the long ones. It looks like the cell is not expanded long enough to capture the whole sentence.
It's not.
It's right before 2.5. Yeah, it just kind of ends with commercial services to new, you know, whatever that is. So there's just kind of a note there. And then 2.7, I was curious what explore options for more mixed use development in Sherwood, kind of the idea, the meaning behind that. Mixed use meaning, in this case, what?
Oh, let me go back. Sorry.
So mixed use meaning a commercial
Office
down
commercial.
below. Yeah,
like it says here. Okay.
Yeah, commercial down below, and then what happens is you put residential above it.
Yeah, I've seen that before. I was just kind of was curious if that's what it had in mind. And it says that here, office commercial. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But it could also be it says office commercial, but I had envisioned also retail. But it looks like that when it went through last time, people were trying to get more office and less retail.
Yeah, and that's what I've seen is, you know, when I've seen mixed use, usually it's a lot in retail on the ground floor and then there's multifamily or something up above. You know, I've seen that. But I was just curious what the vision was there.
That was our first block a year and a half ago, so.
That's it for my comments. I'm good with everything else.
Excellent. I see there. I got to check. There's a conversation. Okay, so we are back. I clicked a button and now I'm lost. Just a second. Okay, there we go. All right, so thank you very much for the action plan. We're going to see this for the other blocks within.
Correct. Each block will have its own implementable matrix with action items.
Excellent. Thank you. This is amazing. This is great work that's been done. All right, and then the last one is the residential design standards and the survey that's online right now, right?
Yes, so this is just going to be a quick update. We have a survey up online. We sent it out actually just last week on the 19th. It's a visual preference survey for residential design standards within the community. As of today, we have a little bit over 190 responses from that survey. We posted the survey to all of our social networks within the community, and we also emailed it to those on the city's utility email listserv. And then we sent it out to all of our boards, committees, and interested parties as well.
So if anybody could share it within their social media outlets, that would be great, because this is what's going to help us make decisions when we do these residential design standards and trying to figure out what people want in the community.
And the survey is going to be posted online until February 2nd. So just next Tuesday.
Is there any reason that we couldn't extend it longer? Or is there just not enough bandwidth?
I think I'm going to have this conversation actually tomorrow with our consultant on the project. I think we can probably expand it by another week, but we want to start collecting the data at some point and start analyzing it in a meaningful way.
Okay, so for the commission, the residential design standards are driving a different project that does not have to do directly with the comprehensive plan update. This is tied to our House Bill 2001 work that we have to do regarding middle housing, and the implementation of those rules are being dovetailed in with our residential design standards so that the implementation of one doesn't happen without ensuring that the other one's in place, so that they are going together. And do you know the timeline for that? Are we going to one hearing with both items together, or are we going to do two separate hearings, and what's the time frame for that?
So we expect this work to wrap up by the end of June of this year for our grant through DLCD for this project. So I expect we don't have to adopt anything by that time frame by the end of June. Our House Bill 2001 requirements don't they're not required by the state until June of 2022. However, what I have heard from Planning Commission in the past is that residential design standards are very important to the community. So that is something that we want to implement first. So what I kind of envision is that this process wraps up by the end of June. We could probably do a little bit more outreach at that time about the residential design standards, and then possibly by early fall of this year, we can start the hearings process.
I'd like
that's just for residential design. That's not implementing middle housing types within the community.
I'd like to get some feedback both from the commission and from the council, because we have a lot of things being thrown at us all at once. And if we get these meshed in with the comprehensive plan update and the residential design standards and House Bill 2001, there's just not enough, there's not enough capacity, bandwidth, or training that can be done between now and June for all three of those things to happen well, I guess. And so I just look towards the rest of the commission to say, we know House Bill 2001, we have to have everything done and implemented by June of 2022 for middle housing, or we will be required to adopt the model code. Yes, which we don't want to do. So back maybe looking at the timeline backwards to say if middle housing has to be done by June 2020, it has to go to council in 2 hearings. It has to do commission at least 2 hearings and at least a couple of work sessions before that. Does that allow us the opportunity to do residential design standards and have that hearing taking place in September, October, a month or so after we've completed the comprehensive plan update, so that we have a chance to wrap one up and then do another public outreach and then bring in? So if you could map that out, and then if any other commissioners have any comments about timing concerns or comments, speak now. No one's afraid. Excited? No, let's do residential design standards right now. Go to hearing in the next 30 days.
I'm too new to know the complications. That's why I don't really have a comment.
Okay.
I mean, I get that there's a lot to this, but I trust your vision that you're concerned, because it feels like there's a lot of agenda coming at us, right? Is kind of what I'm sensing. So.
Yeah, I sense a lot of agenda, and that doesn't factor in any development applications that may come in between now and then. So for any legislative matter to come before us to be adopted, the council will have to hear it in 2. They have 2 hearing requirement. And so that would be a minimum of 1 month's time. And the Planning Commission on the residential design standards, I think we should have a minimum of 2 hearing meetings so that we can hear, make recommendations, get some findings, make some tweaks, and give it back to the staff. So that's another month. And the same would be true for the House Bill 2001 stuff. And that has to be done by June, but I don't want to wait till June. I would like to say we're going to be done with that in April, so that if there's any kickback, pushback, any concerns in April of 2022, when we're doing House Bill 2001, we still have that freeway. So I'm saying the first quarter of 2022 will be all House Bill 2001, which means Q3-4 has to be residential design standards, because we're wrapping up comprehensive plan Q1, Q2, or Q2, Q3 of this year. You said June, right? July.
For the comprehensive plan.
Comprehensive plan.
Yes. So I expect the comprehensive plan to most likely be adopted by complete through the hearings process by the end of July.
Which is, again, a minimum of 2 months. So you're going to have everything drafted to us by the end of April, May. So we'll have one more block. We'll get all the information, and then we'll need more than just 7 days to read the draft. Whoops, where'd you go? Draft comprehensive plan. I think that's only fair that we need to have it, in a work session as a full document before we do that. So how workload wise, Commissioner Kai is still here, and Commissioner Widola, you've been through a couple of these. No one's ever been through a comprehensive plan on this committee before, and we've not really ever done huge code amendments. We've done a couple of code changes through hearing process. What's your feeling about trying to continue on residential design standards at the same time we're doing the last couple of blocks of this comprehensive plan update?
And that was a question directly for me.
Or Commissioner Kai and Commissioner Widola, no one's been through comp plans before, so we don't know how much more work that's going to be, but it seems like each block is a lot of work. And right now we're adding onto it residential design standards. So how much more traction do we want to put into residential design standards and getting to draft language and to hearing within the next 90 days versus getting to a point that gets us our DLCD grant part of the project done, putting a pin in it, and then circling back to it in about another 90 days after we've completed the comprehensive plan.
First, I would default to your judgment, having being the senior member of the commission, and having a lot more experience. I'm only 18 months in or so I'm still fairly green and new, but have been here a few months longer than some of the colleagues now on the commission, and then input from staff as well. My instinct in everything is to rip the Band-Aid off quickly. The more painful it is, let's just get it done, dig in. But with some pretty complex things we're working on here, that may not be the best strategy. So again, I'll default to your judgment.
Okay. Commissioner Kai, do you have any input on this?
Yeah, likewise, Gene. Along with Commissioner Idola, I'm in support of what you feel is the best path forward on this. My thoughts on it are that I know how important we all feel this is for the city. So on one hand, I don't want it to get delayed or shelved or lose momentum or anything like that. But at the same time, I know we don't want it to suffer or compromise or be compromised in its final result. If there's and again, as long as there's if it is delayed and we just know really like what's the length of that delay, and just to be certain that we will be able to get back to it, I think are my primary concerns. So
okay, well, what I was concerned about was with 5-6 new commissioners that we don't, because there is a point of, I was just sensing maybe I'm just trying to read minds, and I don't do that well, is I just don't want to get commissioners getting so many packets, so much work sessions, without having a result that's coming through and then piling on more. And so I just wanted to be respectful to everybody's time and the amount of reading that's going to have to come forth with this, and also staff's time, because they have a lot to put together to make this all work, and it's a lot to be asking to do at the same time. But if we can keep pushing through, and just if anybody can be even just an email to me or an email to Erica that says, hey, I think we're doing too much too fast, can we take an extra breather, or I missed this, can we revisit this? This is our opportunity to me just say, I don't want to kill off 7 planning commissioners because we're trying to get too many things done all at once. So
that was my question, is the amount of time outside of these meetings. It sounds like there's going to be huge packets of reading, and I read a lot for a lot of other things, so that's not horrible. It's just how much time expectation, So, but I like your plan too, is kind of provide feedback along the way. If it's just too much, we slow it down. I just being new, don't know how much there really is coming. Although I will say this does seem like it's kind of a unique season for this commission. I've kind of gotten the impression that what we've been doing is not normal. So there's that too. So you can do anything for a month, but you get burnout if it's if it's really lengthy. And so
and I guess that's where I'm coming from, because there are a lot of new commissioners, and I have been doing the CAC part of this in addition to the regular planning commission for almost 18 months now, and I'm feeling the pressure of a lot of extra reading, a lot of extra meetings, and I don't want to. I think we have a really, really, really good group of planning commissioners. You guys are great. You ask a lot of really good questions. You come prepared. The amount of interaction that you guys provide at every one of these meetings is fabulous. And so I don't want to scare anybody off or make anybody think that this is a never-ending process. It is, we've got this block that we're in right now, and then we've got one more block. And so what we just did with the transportation, we have to do all over again with parks, but they already have a master plan. more block, and that's the parks plan, and so it's diff. But then we have to recircle everything together, and the blocks that you didn't see before are some of the more complicated ones, the housing blocks, the economic development block. I think Commissioner Kai and Commissioner Widola were part of that. When we get into that, I guess I'll just open the door and say, Eric, if we can keep plowing through, let's do it. But when we get to that point where we're revisiting all 6 blocks and it's becoming a comprehensive document, if we have an opportunity to take a breath, let's just know where we can take and say, okay, well, this is way more than we anticipated. Can we push the residential design standards by 14 days or 30 days and still meet our guidelines without missing House Bill 2001 and not jeopardizing any of our 120 days on our applications? So anyway, I was trying to be very respectful to your guys' time. And if you get a packet that's 300 pages and you want to call me or call Erica or call another commissioner and say, what do I need to focus on? Is the executive summary this 2 white pages? Is this what else do I need to know about? That's really fair. So
you need a quorum for all. I'm guessing you need some kind of a quorum for all these meetings. And does anybody have like a bunch of vacations planned? Maybe that's some consideration too.
Well,
but
maybe
this is the right time before
where would we all go?
Exactly. Maybe this is the right time. You get it done by June, you know?
Can I say, can we leave our houses yet? We're still in lockdown, right?
Right.
Yeah, no, we have to have a quorum for any regularly scheduled hearing. And I always think that we should have as many people as possible because the amount of participation and the depth of work that we do when we've got everybody here participating, it's head and shoulders above anything else we can do when we're just 3 or 4 of us. When we get collaboration going of all the commissioners, especially when we can be in the same room, it's amazing. And you guys have done fabulous having to pick up and carry a load that's so huge. So anyway,
I'll say for me personally, the sooner we're back in a room, I'll be there.
Excellent.
Ready, willing.
Okay, well, Erica, I didn't scare anybody off, and they all sound able to keep on keeping on. So again, if you don't feel comfortable making comment, you can send an email to Erica and say, let's just take a pause, and we'll revisit it.
Gene, now I did want to ask if residential design standards were to be lower prioritized right now, what would that look like? Do we know a time frame before it would come back, or
I guess if we don't, my fear is that we were doing it at the same time we're doing the next comprehensive block. If we were to wait and not do it at the same time, it would come back to us in about July of, so in 5 months.
And another thing I was wondering too was like what would the first steps of that process be on establishing residential design standards? Would we start with design standards from another community that we're modeling off of, and just to get familiar with it, and then look at what changes from there?
That is everything on the table. That's why my concern is that we are doing this survey that's going to end on February 2nd, which is only a week, so that we can start drafting language. And that really, to me, is fast tracking something where we haven't even as a commission said, we like what happened at Villebois, Lake Oswego, and, the Orchard subdivision in Vancouver. So can the planning staff get us code that looks like that so we can look at it? And I just made 3 things up. I have no idea what the city of Orchards in Vancouver looks like because I haven't been there, but I'm just saying we haven't, as a commission, given any direction to staff about what we expect, because we haven't gotten our design survey, the visual preference survey back from the citizens yet. We're still working on that, but the window for doing the survey is only 14 days. So
Yeah.
Are we given enough opportunity for our citizens to comment? And then once we start going forward, were you part of the industrial design standard hearings when we did those?
I don't believe I was.
Okay. Yeah, it's staff puts together white paper, background material, and brings us some draft language usually. And Erica's nodding her head that says, yeah. And then we try and provide input. And so, you know, some of that, it comes from, you know, we like what happened in this neighborhood. How do we make that happen in the city of Sherwood?
Yeah.
Or, you know, our Old Town design standards are great. Let's just implement them throughout the city of Sherwood. Or, you know, we throw out a few ideas and then they start drafting language and they bring us back something that we have to then edit.
Yep.
And we will have probably a couple of work sessions on editing that.
And I think that would even be a good place to start. You know, you mentioned the Old Town design standards. Erica, could you make that available for all of the commission, just so that we can get kind of familiar with that type of process?
Yes, so I can definitely send out the code chapters for the Old Town development guidelines.
Great, thank you.
That has like the strict criteria and then some optional criteria within it, correct?
I believe so.
Yeah. So I think that's what we were, and then I'm sure there's going to be other processes like, you know, how do we want the code to be implemented for, you know, do we want everything to go through staff? Do we want everything to go through planning commission? At what level? So there'll be questions, and maybe Erica, the next one we talk about this, we kind of try and figure out steps so that some of my challenges in the past with doing the code development has been we get something already drafted to us before we really have an idea to provide input of what we liked and didn't like. So when we get done with the visual preference survey, maybe we present that to the commission and then have the commission look at some code and see if there's things they like or don't like, or the commission can bring ideas about communities they like and they don't like and what worked and didn't work.
Gene or Erica, are there other parts of Sherwood that have a comprehensive design guideline in place? I know, you know, for the Denali division, you know, we went through some design standards, but I'm guessing the Old Town ones are probably like the most comprehensive, or?
Yeah, so the only zone in Sherwood that has residential design standards are the Old Town Overlay Zone for Smockville and Cannery Row. And then we have a commercial design matrix and an industrial design matrix for commercial and residential development.
Okay. Okay, I was just curious.
I did get a text message from Commissioner Giles. Appreciates he could. I am fine with the reading load, but we need executive summary still, so that's good. And then for input, could we do a driving tour one night and look at some of the housing developments and stand outside our cars in a socially distant way and talk about what we like and what we don't like?
That's cool.
And that's a really good idea to say this particular development worked and this one didn't. The only other one that had design criteria as it came through is the development next to Target also, because that came through as a PUD like the Denali did. The developer brought in a PUD, or actually they changed the code at that time, and it had specific standards, and that code has sunsetted.
But I think that's a good example of, a successful example of what we may be trying to achieve here. And that one was done in a way where it's probably more dense than most people might initially think they're comfortable with, but it's still done in single family home variations, but that also have a lot of character and quality to them. So
can you bring up that code language too? It's old. It's
Yes, I think I found it before. I think I can find it again.
okay. So that came in. The developer wanted to build that was zoned for high density residential for apartments, and rather than doing apartments, the developer brought in a specific code chapter that expired so many months after it was initiated, and they were able to build that development based under code standards that have since expired. But it was a code that, if implemented in high density residential, that's the result that you get, is instead of apartments, you get the small houses on small lots. So, and maybe a couple of links for the commission to look at on what residential code looks like in once we get feedback for other communities. That'll be part of our homework when we get to that point. So, well, thank you for your kind words, commissioners. And is there any other comments or concerns or questions before? Erica, do you have any other words of wisdom for us?
Upward and onward.
Drive on. I like
you, Erica, for everything you do.
Yeah.
I
We
appreciate
need to
it.
get the Brookwood packet resent to the newer commissioners so they can understand what a big packet looks like. I think that was about 2 feet thick, if I remember right.
Oh, man.
You guys, until you go through a Target application, that was a box that we had to carry back and forth.
well, then we'd end up with at least two Targets in Sherwood, right?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So, all right.
You're a fearless leader. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Erica.
I rely on staff and you guys making me look good. So, if there's no other comments, I don't see any hands raised. We can go ahead and adjourn our work session. Seeing none, we are formally adjourned. Thank you very much.
Everybody.
Have a good evening.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.